Don't touch him! Lillian's voice shook the marble walls of Rose Hill Mansion as she planted herself between the masked intruder and the billionaire's son, wielding a frying pan like a weapon. Gregory Johnson stood frozen in the doorway, briefcase slipping from his hand, his brain refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. His maid, his invisible employee, had just saved his son's life. And the man she knocked out. He wasn't just an assassin. He was sent by someone Gregory trusted with everything. Nestled in the rolling hills of Geneva, New York, Rose Hill Mansion stood like a monument to old money and careful control. With white columns that scraped the sky and fireplaces that had burned through centuries, it was the kind of home that looked like it could never be touched by chaos. But inside, it was hollow. Beautiful, but hollow. And Lillian Richardson could feel that hollowness every time she swept the grand staircase. She wasn't new to houses like this, or to being invisible in them. She was the kind of woman people passed without seeing until they needed something cleaned, folded, or fixed. But over the past 3 months at Rose Hill, she'd become something more, especially to one little boy. Alex Johnson, 6 years old, curly hair, sharp as a tack, and lonely. Very, very lonely. His mother had died in a car crash 2 years earlier. His father, Gregory Johnson, tech mogul, billionaire, emotionally unavailable, and constantly too busy. If there was one thing Lillian had learned in all her years cleaning mansions, it was this: money doesn't keep children warm at night. "Miss Lillian, do you think I'm brave?" Alex asked one afternoon, peeking over his bowl of cereal. She smiled gently, tucking a napkin into his shirt collar. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, baby. Even when you're scared, you still smile." And for a split second she saw the corners of his mouth turn upward. That was all the reward she ever needed. That morning, Gregory had left at 5 a.m. sharp. Back-to-back investor meetings in Manhattan, private jet, tailored suit. His goodbye was a nod to his assistant, not his son. Rose Hill went silent again. Lillian busied herself with laundry on the second floor. Alex was in his playroom, reenacting a superhero scene with his stuffed bear, Captain Claw. The fire was lit downstairs. Warmth filled the mansion. Everything felt okay, until it didn't. A subtle shift, a creak where no floorboard should have creaked. Lillian's hand froze over a folded towel. Her eyes darted to the hallway. Then she heard it. Alex's voice. Soft, confused. "Hey, who are you?" Her blood ran cold. She moved fast, quietly. Years of survival had taught her how to read danger without making a sound. She reached the main foyer just in time to see it. A man, tall, dressed in black tactical gear, crouched near the playroom entrance. He was reaching into his coat. Instinct overrode fear. Lillian grabbed the first thing she could from the kitchen counter, a frying pan, and ran. "Don't touch him!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the mansion like a knife. The intruder turned just in time to meet cold metal to his temple. He dropped. Hard. Alex screamed. Lillian shielded him, and that's when the front door opened. Gregory Johnson stepped inside, one hand holding a teddy bear he picked up from a boutique in Manhattan, the other clutching his briefcase. His gaze landed on the scene. His son, crying. His maid, panting. A man, bleeding on the floor. And the weapon? A kitchen frying pan. His brain couldn't keep up with his eyes. This wasn't business. This wasn't stock market logic. This was raw, real, unexplainable, and it would change everything. If your heart skipped even once during that scene, if you felt even a flicker of fear for that little boy or respect for the maid who stood her ground, then ask yourself, why aren't you subscribed yet? Real stories like this don't just entertain, they stay with you. So don't just watch, join the family, hit subscribe. We've only just begun. The silence that followed was louder than the scream that came before it. The frying pan slipped from Lillian's fingers and hit the marble floor with a dull metallic thud. The sound echoed across the mansion like a church bell tolling for the dead. Gregory Johnson still hadn't moved. He stood in the open doorway, rain speckled across his tailored coat, briefcase half open at his side, the teddy bear soaked and dangling from his hand. His eyes weren't on the intruder. They were locked on her, the maid, the one he barely remembered hiring, the one who had just saved his only son's life. Lillian was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline. She dropped to her knees beside Alex, pulling him into her arms as he sobbed against her chest. His tiny fists clung to her shirt, like she was the only solid thing in a crumbling world. "It's okay, baby, I've got you." "You're okay," she whispered, rocking him gently. Her voice cracked, but her hands didn't. That's when Gregory finally spoke. "What the hell happened?" It wasn't anger, it was disbelief. He stepped forward slowly, eyes flicking between his son, the man on the floor, and Lillian. She didn't answer right away. She was too busy checking Alex's face, his arms, his legs, making sure he wasn't hurt. It wasn't until she was certain, absolutely certain, that she looked up at Gregory. He was going to kill him. Her voice was firm, low, controlled. Gregory's heart stopped. "What?" "I saw him. Masked. Armed. He was reaching for something. Alex was right there. I did what I had to do." Gregory's face tightened. He dropped the bear and strode toward the unconscious man. Kneeling down, he checked for a pulse. Still alive. A weapon lay inches from the man's open hand. A small handgun with a silencer. Gregory recoiled. This wasn't a random break-in. It wasn't a robbery. This was a hit. Inside his own home. Targeting his son. A sudden wave of nausea crashed into him. He staggered to his feet, ran a hand through his damp hair, and looked around, really looked. Alex, clinging to Lillian, Lillian holding him like her own. The gun, the body, the frying pan, his mansion once pristine, now stained with something raw. "Why?" he started, then stopped. His voice broke. "Why would someone do this?" Lillian stood slowly. She held Alex's hand, but never looked away from Gregory. "I don't know, sir, but it wasn't random." A beat passed. "And it wasn't petty." Gregory, quiet, shaken. How long was he in the house before you saw him?" Lillian, "I don't know. A minute? Less. I was folding laundry upstairs. Then I heard Alex talking to someone he didn't recognize." Gregory, "And you just," gesturing to the pan, "ran in?" Lillian, "I ran because no one else would have gotten there in time." Gregory looked away, shame crawling up his throat. She was right. He wasn't there. The guards weren't there. The cameras didn't alert anyone. The system he paid millions for had failed. But she hadn't. Lillian stood in front of that man, with nothing but a cast-iron pan and courage, and Gregory couldn't look her in the eyes. Not yet. He turned toward the hallway and barked into his Bluetooth headset. "Security, lockdown, call the police, no one comes in or out. I want this man alive and I want to know who sent him now." As he spoke, Lillian knelt again beside Alex. His breathing had steadied. He looked up at her with wide, wet eyes. "Miss Lillian, are you going to leave?" She swallowed the lump in her throat. "No, baby, I'm not going anywhere." From the corner of the room, Gregory heard it. That softness, that motherhood, something he hadn't heard in that house since his wife died. Something he hadn't given Alex in months, maybe years. He looked at Lillian again, and for the first time he didn't see a maid. He saw a woman who had just changed everything. The flashing lights from the police cruisers turned Rose Hill's manicured driveway into a crime scene. Uniformed officers stepped over the estate's marble threshold with measured urgency, their radios hissing with clipped phrases. The once silent mansion now pulsed with the hum of investigation and suspicion. But inside, it was quieter than ever. Gregory Johnson stood by the fireplace staring into the flames, hands clenched behind his back. His custom Italian suit was still damp from the rain, but he hadn't moved to change. He hadn't said much at all. He just stood there, like a man trying to understand how his fortress had cracked. Behind him, Lillian sat on the velvet sofa, arms wrapped around Alex, who had finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. Her uniform was wrinkled, hair a mess, hands still trembling from the weight of everything that had happened. A detective stepped into the room, notepad in hand. "Mr. Johnson, I need to ask again. Do you know anyone who would want to hurt your son?" Gregory turned slowly. His jaw was tight, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "No, absolutely not." "Any family disputes? Custody battles? Former employees?" "None. I live a private life." The detective raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. He scribbled something, then turned to Lillian. "And you, Miss Richardson, did you see his face?" Lillian nodded slowly. "He wore a mask, but I saw his eyes. Light brown. Sharp. Professional. He didn't hesitate." She looked down at Alex, her fingers brushing over his curls. "He wasn't here to rob us. He came for the boy." The room sank deeper into stillness. After the officers cleared the area and the intruder was taken away in an ambulance, still unconscious, Gregory finally spoke. "You should go." Lillian's eyes lifted sharply. "Excuse me?" He looked away. "You've been through a lot. I'll have security take over. You're not expected to stay." Her voice cut through the room like a blade. "You think I'm walking away now?" He turned toward her. She stood slowly, setting Alex gently against a pillow. "That little boy just watched a man try to kill him in his own house," she said, her voice rising. "You think he needs bodyguards in suits with guns? Or someone he trusts?" Gregory's shoulders tensed. "It's not about that. It's liability, publicity. You were just involved in a physical confrontation. I saved his life." Silence. "You think your reputation is the one at risk here?" she continued. "I put myself between your son and a bullet because no one else was there. Not your cameras, not your guards, not you." That one landed. Gregory flinched, and for a moment he looked like a man being told a truth he'd never dared consider. "You know what I think?" she added, quieter now. "I think you're scared to face the fact that someone inside this house may have let that man in. I think you're afraid to ask who has access. And I think you're wondering—" She stepped closer. "If you were the target, and not your son." "Gregory, you don't know anything about me." Lillian, "Maybe not, but I know what guilt looks like." Gregory, tense. "This isn't guilt. It's control. Or lack of it." Lillian, softly. "Same thing." Gregory turned away, the fire's reflection flickering in his eyes. She was right. Every inch of his world was built on structure, walls, systems, protection, and tonight it had all shattered, by one man, and one woman who wasn't supposed to matter. Later that night, Gregory sat in his study, surveillance footage pulled up across multiple monitors, but none of it helped. No footage of the intruder entering, no breach, no break-in. Whoever sent him had access. He thought of the people who knew the codes, people who'd worked in the house longer than Lillian, people who'd been with his company for years, people he trusted. His stomach turned. In the guest wing, Lillian lay awake on a small daybed, eyes on the ceiling. She couldn't sleep, not yet. Not while that boy was still in shock. Not while the question of why hung heavy in the halls. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going anywhere. Not until Alex smiled again. Not until she knew he was safe. At this point in the story, what would you do? If you were Gregory, would you trust her? If you were Lillian, would you stay? Drop your answers in the comments. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button, not just because it helps us, but because stories like these deserve to be told, and you deserve to hear them. Lillian should have gone home. She knew it. Her shift had technically ended before the chaos. Her clothes were stained, her hands ached, and the kind of adrenaline that makes you swing a frying pan at a trained killer. That had long since crashed. But she didn't leave. Because Alex hadn't let go of her hand. The paramedics had cleared him, no physical injuries, just shaken, traumatized, clinging to her like his soul had been stapled to hers. So she stayed. And Gregory hadn't said a word about it. In fact, he hadn't left either. They were both still at the mansion, both on edge, both not speaking about the one thing they couldn't stop thinking about: who ordered the hit? That night, the guest wing's lights stayed on. Lillian sat in a plush armchair, watching over Alex as he slept in her bed, too scared to be alone in his. She had brushed his hair back, sang him a soft hymn her grandmother used to hum, and promised, "I won't let anything happen to you." Outside the room, footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy, hesitant. Gregory. He stood at the doorway, hand against the frame, eyes low. "He asleep?" She nodded. Finally. He stepped inside, slowly. The distance between them was uncomfortable, like two strangers at a funeral who've shared a secret neither wants to revisit. Then, softly, "Thank you for not leaving." She looked up at him, surprised, not because of the words, but because of the way he said them. Not like a billionaire, not like a boss, but like a father. A man who had finally seen something he couldn't ignore. "He needed someone," she replied. Her voice didn't accuse him, but it didn't protect him either. He sat across from her in the chair beside the window. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence stretched, but it wasn't cold anymore, just real. "Gregory, do you have kids?" Lillian. "I did." A pause. "He'd be 9 this year." Gregory blinked, straightening slightly. She didn't offer more, and he didn't push. The silence returned, but this time it was respectful. He looked at Alex's sleeping face. "He hasn't slept this peacefully in months." "He just needed to feel safe," Lillian whispered. Gregory's eyes moved to her. Not the uniform, not the job. Her. "I'm not sure I even know what that means anymore." A soft creak of the house, and they both looked up. Even in a mansion this size, the walls felt tighter now, like the house itself had leaned in to listen. "Do you have a guest room near here?" Lillian asked. "I don't want him waking up alone." Gregory hesitated, then stood. "You can take the one across the hall. I'll have someone bring you fresh clothes." A beat. Then she looked at him steady. "No press, no pictures, no interviews. I'm here for him, not your image." He nodded once, and it mattered, because for the first time he was taking direction. That night, forced proximity became chosen proximity. They stayed within earshot of each other. Alex slept peacefully, tucked between memories and trauma, and outside his door, the two people who never planned to trust each other began to wonder what would happen if they did. The next morning, frost lined the edges of Rose Hill's windows, like the house itself was holding its breath. Gregory Johnson was already awake. Not that he'd slept. He stood in front of the security monitor in his study, eyes bloodshot, rewinding footage from every angle of the property. Nothing. No signs of the man entering. No alarms triggered. No guards reported anything unusual. It didn't make sense. He took a sip of black coffee and winced. It was cold, bitter, fitting. His assistant had emailed him a list of all staff with gate access. 2 guards, the estate manager, the private chef, and Lillian. He paused on her name. She'd only been here 3 months. No background issues, no red flags, just quiet. But quiet didn't mean safe. Or did it? Across the hallway, Lillian helped Alex get dressed. He seemed lighter this morning, still scared, still jumpy. But with her close, he smiled. He trusted her, and part of her hated that. Because trust meant attachment, and attachment meant vulnerability. And she'd promised herself she'd never feel that again. A knock at the door. Gregory. "Can I speak to you?" he asked, his voice unreadable. She nodded, walked with him down the hallway, into the sunlit sitting room. They didn't sit. He folded his arms across his chest, pacing slowly. She stood near the window, watching him like a storm on the edge of the horizon. "I ran all the footage. There's no sign of how that man got in," he started. She said nothing. But someone let him in. Still, she didn't respond. Not defensiveness, not fear. Just silence. "Lillian, who are you really?" Now her eyes met his. Not wide, not panicked. just steady. "I used to work with at-risk youth," she said, "before cleaning homes before this." Gregory blinked. "In Chicago, I was a community worker. My son, Jamal, he was shot outside a convenience store." Her voice didn't crack, but her eyes did. "I spent 2 years trying to fix a system that didn't want to be fixed, and when that broke me, I left. I cleaned houses because they didn't need me to care, just to show up, mop, and leave." A pause. "But then I met Alex." Gregory swallowed hard. Everything he thought he knew about her reshuffled in an instant. "Gregory," softly, "why didn't you tell me?" Lillian, "Because people don't hire maids with dead sons and activist records." Gregory, "I would have." Lillian, quiet, "No, you wouldn't have seen me." He exhaled sharply, like the truth had punched him in the chest. She was right. He hadn't seen her at all. Later, Gregory sat alone at the kitchen island, flipping through digital access logs. A ping from his assistant lit up his phone. FYI, the estate manager's credentials were used to disable the perimeter camera feeds 2 hours before the attack. He froze. The estate manager, a man who had worked with Gregory for 7 years, a man who knew everything. Gregory's face paled. He stood, the chair scraping back against the polished floor. He'd trusted the wrong person. Meanwhile, back in the guest wing, Lillian stood by the window, watching Alex play with a puzzle. But her mind wasn't on the boy. It was on Gregory. For the first time, she wasn't sure he was the one who needed protecting. She had a feeling something worse was coming, something that would shatter everything. The fire in the Rose Hill living room had burned low, casting long amber shadows across the hardwood floor. The house for once wasn't silent from cold, but from peace. It was the first quiet moment since everything shattered. Lillian sat cross-legged on the thick Persian rug, helping Alex build a Lego rocket. His fingers were tiny but precise, his face deeply focused. Gregory leaned against the doorway, holding 2 mugs of warm tea, one for him, one for her. No suit tonight, just a sweater and slacks. He looked human. Not Mr. Johnson, just Gregory. He stepped in slowly and handed her the cup. She accepted it with a small nod. "Chamomile," he said. "Figured you've had enough chaos." She smirked faintly. "You're not wrong." Alex looked up at his father, eyes wide. "Daddy, look, it's a spaceship. Miss Lillian helped me make the fire jets." Gregory knelt beside them, gently ruffling his son's hair. "Looks way cooler than anything I built at your age." For the first time in what felt like years, Gregory heard his son laugh, not politely, not nervously, but a real laugh, the kind that came from his belly, from safety. He glanced at Lillian. She wasn't smiling for show. She was just there, fully present. Calm. He studied her in the flickering light. She wasn't just brave, she was constant. Later, after Alex had gone to bed, the 2 adults sat across from each other, tea now cold but conversation slowly warming. "What was he like?" Gregory asked softly. Lillian didn't have to ask who he was. She let the silence stretch. "Jamal was stubborn," she said, eyes distant. "Smart-mouthed. Always thought he knew better than me." A soft laugh. "He used to line up his toys like soldiers, always had to have them in a certain order. God forbid you moved one." Gregory smiled. "Alex is like that with his stuffed animals." A pause. "Do you miss him every day?" he asked, voice nearly breaking. "No," she said quietly. "Only when I breathe." Gregory, "You're stronger than anyone I know." Lillian, "You don't have to be strong to survive, just tired of being broken." Gregory, "Still, I don't know how you do it." Lillian, softly, "You don't have to know. You just have to stay in the room." The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled over the hills. But inside that room, it was the first time 2 broken people had stopped trying to hide it. Lillian looked at him. "You should talk to him more, you know." Gregory blinked. "Alex?" She nodded. "He doesn't want your money. He just wants your voice, your time, even if it's awkward. even if you don't know what to say. He stared into the fire. I don't know how to be enough for him. You're already everything, she whispered. You just forgot how to show it. For a moment it felt like the whole mansion sighed, as if it too had been waiting for this moment of honesty, of two people meeting not as maid and master, not as protector and employer, but as mother and father in a house that had forgotten how to hold warmth. If you've ever lost someone, or loved someone so much it made your voice catch, then you know what this moment means. The sun outside was soft, gentle even, a deceptive calm. Inside Rose Hill, it was the kind of day where you could almost forget what happened. Almost. Alex was drawing superheroes at the dining table. Lillian had just brought him a fresh sandwich, crusts cut off the way he liked. Gregory stood nearby, phone pressed to his ear. Quiet. Focused. Too focused. Understood. Forward me the full report. No, I don't want summaries. I want timestamps. Every login, every entry, especially hers. Lillian froze as the last word left his mouth. Hers? Gregory turned slightly. Eyes meeting hers, but not with softness, with calculation. I'm just being thorough. Her voice was sharp, low, controlled. You're investigating me. He paused, didn't deny it. Your access codes were used. I had to be sure. Lillian stepped closer, fury and heartbreak rising together. So after everything, after I saved your son's life, you think I could hurt him? Gregory's voice didn't rise, but his words landed like punches. People lie. People hide things. You lied about your past. What else should I overlook? Silence. Alex looked up, confused. Lillian's chest rose and fell. I didn't lie. I just didn't hand you my pain like a resume. Gregory took a step toward her, the space between them now unbearable. And what if I told you someone linked to your past was tied to the hit, that the man in custody used to work in the same organization you did? She blinked. The room spun slightly. You think I planned it? Her voice broke. That I used my son's memory, used Alex as bait. Gregory's jaw clenched. I don't know what to think anymore. That was it. The sentence that shattered the bridge they'd been building. Lillian took a slow step back, eyes burning. Lillian. You know, I thought I was imagining it. This shift in you. The way you started to see me. As more than just a maid. As someone who mattered. Gregory. You do matter. Lillian. Not enough to be believed. She turned, walking toward the hallway. Gregory moved after her. Lillian, wait. She stopped at the stairs, voice trembling but clear. No. I stayed because of Alex. I opened up because I thought I finally found a place where I wasn't just tolerated, but trusted. She looked back. But I won't stay somewhere I'm watched like a threat. Not again. She disappeared up the stairs. The silence left behind was heavier than any accusation. That night, Gregory sat alone in the living room, the house darker than usual. The fire was out. So was Alex's smile, because Lillian didn't come back down. And Alex kept asking over and over again, is she mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Where's Miss Lillian? Gregory had no answers, only guilt. The mansion echoed with absence, and for the first time since the attack, Gregory felt truly alone. The sun rose slowly over Geneva, casting a golden glow over Rose Hill's cold marble floors. But the warmth never touched the inside. Gregory sat alone in the study, staring at an untouched cup of coffee. No emails, no calls, just silence. Lillian hadn't come down, and the guest wing door remained closed. He had broken something, not because he was wrong to be cautious, but because he forgot she was a person, not a file. And that trust doesn't survive under suspicion. In the guest room, Lillian sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the duffel bag she hadn't touched since she got here. She had packed her things that morning. She could leave. She should leave. But Alex's drawings sat on the nightstand beside her. A crude, sweet crayon sketch of the three of them standing under a rainbow. Him, her, Gregory. The words scrawled underneath in big, messy letters. My family. Her hands shook. She wasn't family. She was the help. And she'd been reminded of that the second Gregory flinched at her past. Still, part of her didn't want to walk away. Meanwhile, in the security room, Gregory rewound the footage again. Not of the attack, but of her. Lillian, crouching beside Alex, wiping his tears. Lillian, reading to him in the hallway. Lillian holding him like a mother when no one else dared get close. She was so much more than what he accused her of, and he knew it. He picked up his phone, stared at her number, put it down, picked it up again. No. Some things needed to be said in person. Gregory, whispering to himself, if she leaves now, she'll never come back. He stood, and for once, he didn't think about pride. Upstairs, Lillian zipped her bag. She took one last look at the room. Then, a knock, gentle, not loud, not demanding, just present. She hesitated, opened the door. Gregory stood there, not in a suit, no defense in his posture, just a man, face open, voice low. Say something, he said. She held his gaze for a long moment, eyes glassy. You already said enough. A pause. But you didn't believe it. Gregory nodded slowly. I don't know how to fix this, he said honestly. Then don't try to fix it, she whispered. Just mean what you say this time. He stepped aside, clearing the hallway. Can we talk? Really talk? Lillian didn't move for a long time. Then finally, she stepped out. Not with trust, but with a thread of willingness. And sometimes, that's more powerful than forgiveness. Downstairs, Alex was in the sunroom building a new Lego city. When he saw Lillian walk in behind Gregory, his eyes lit up. Miss Lillian, you came back. She knelt beside him, pulled him into her arms. I never left, baby. I was just thinking. Gregory watched them silently, and for the first time he knew he didn't just owe her an apology. He owed her his presence, his honesty, his trust. And if he wanted either of them to stay, he'd have to choose differently this time. Rose Hill Mansion had changed, not physically. The walls still echoed, the chandeliers still sparkled, and the fireplace still glowed. But something inside it felt alive again. Alex now laughed freely. He spent more time in the sunroom than behind locked doors, and whenever he called for Lillian, it was no longer out of fear, but joy. She stayed. Gregory had asked, not begged, not demanded. He just showed up every morning, every evening, with words that finally meant something. And slowly the mansion stopped feeling like a fortress. It started to feel like a home. But the question still lingered. Who sent the assassin, and why? That answer was still locked behind security layers, until it wasn't. A phone call came in. Gregory sat at his desk, Lillian nearby, folding clean linens on the armchair in the study. Alex was upstairs drawing again, his newest project, a comic book about a maid who fought crime with a frying pan. Gregory put the phone on speaker. Sir, his assistant's voice crackled, we got a full ID on the man from the attack. Gregory leaned forward. Lillian paused. Name's Derek Monroe, ex-military, private security for hire, formerly contracted by... A pause. The Dover Group, your father's old firm. Gregory's stomach sank. My father's company shut down years ago. Yes, sir, but not before transferring their client portfolio to a private holding group. That group was headed by someone named Patricia Ellis. The blood drained from Gregory's face. Lillian stepped closer. Her hand gently rested on the edge of the desk. Who is Patricia? Gregory didn't answer. His voice came out cracked, wounded. My sister. Silence fell. Not the cold kind. The kind that came with betrayal that rewrote your entire childhood. Why? Lillian asked softly. Gregory stared out the window, eyes burning. She always thought she should have inherited control, not me. My father promised it to me before he died. She sued, lost, swore it wasn't over. He shook his head. She didn't want Alex dead. She wanted me shattered. Alex was leverage, Lillian exhaled. And what will you do now? Whatever it takes to protect him, Gregory said. No hesitation. He looked at her. And that includes protecting the only person who's ever truly shown up for him. I've spent years believing money could fix everything, but no amount of wealth has ever made me feel what I feel when I see you with my son. Lillian, gentle. Then maybe it's time to stop spending money and start spending time. Later that evening, in the same room where it all began, the fire crackled. Alex sat curled beside Lillian on the couch, head on her shoulder. Gregory walked in, no suit, no briefcase, just holding the teddy bear he dropped that night. He handed it to Alex. "Think you forgot something?" The boy beamed, then reached for Gregory's hand, tugging him onto the couch beside them. And just like that, the three of them sat there. No words, just breath, warmth, healing, the kind that money could never buy. If this story reminded you that sometimes family isn't about blood, if you've ever been saved by someone who wasn't supposed to, then do one thing. Subscribe. Because you're not just watching stories here, you're becoming part of them.